Welcome back to Nick in Detail. I'm Nick, and in today's video, we're going to be reviewing the All Blacks and France game, which took place in Christchurch last night. In this video, I'll give my thoughts on the game, who was my standout player, and look ahead to who's next for the All Blacks. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. The All Blacks have claimed their inaugural Nations Championship win for 2026, but in very close fashion. They've held off the French team 34-32 in the first ever Test match at One New Zealand Stadium. The All Blacks now 1-4-1 in this year's championship. But let's get my thoughts on the game. This actually didn't start too great for the All Blacks. They conceded within the first minute and a half, very much letting the French walk over them in that first couple of minutes. But I think it's almost like they needed to concede first, because I think we really saw the All Blacks get into the rhythm after conceding this early try. And this is even them down to 14 men. I think there was just so much, aggression going forward for the All Blacks on their attack. There was just so much desire to put pressure on this French team, and overall this was actually a relatively good performance for the All Blacks in their first hit out, because normally when we hear All Blacks first hit outs, we normally know it's not really the best of performances. Don't get me wrong, this wasn't a fantastic performance, but this is actually one of the better performances I've seen the All Blacks play first up in their international calendar. But France made it very tricky for the All Blacks, and probably safe to say we're maybe a little bit unlucky not to get the result. Remember, this is a France team very much still bringing over a couple of their big players, more notably from Bordeaux, who won the European Championship Cup the other day, but very much the likes of Antoine Dupont, their star halfback, was not in this game, being that he, of course, played in the French League final, of course, just the other day. But overall, the French really putting the All Blacks under a lot of pressure, as we saw them do in last year's 3-game series, and very much the French putting in some really good shifts in that game. But for the All Blacks, as I said before, it's just very much a big change in this team this year. I think what we've really seen from the All Blacks last night is just them desire to really go forward, really put that pressure on, and very much just that intent and aggressiveness going forward to want to score tries, something that I don't think we've really seen All Blacks do over the last few years. But yes, overall for a first game, this is actually not a bad performance for the All Blacks. They took their chances. Yes, handling errors were very much a common thing. They probably left about 15 points out there in my view, basically because of handling errors. But overall, if I'm looking from a wider perspective, the first hit out of the year, this is not a bad showing for the All Blacks. And for Dave Rennie getting his first win, he'll be pretty happy with that. But at the same time as well, it gives the All Blacks something to build on ahead of the next 2 games. But for France, as I said before, this wasn't a bad performance. I think very much for them. I think towards the end, we kind of saw defensively them slip a little bit. I think allow the All Blacks to control the momentum and the pace of what this game needed to be played at. But I think overall for the French team, considering a couple of their big players weren't playing in this game, this wasn't a bad performance from them, and something they can build on ahead of their next 2 games as well. So who was my standout player? Well, there's a few players for me that stood out in last night's game, but for me, my shout out is going to go to Cam Roigard. He's very much been the big part of this All Blacks team, I'd say, over the last year or so, and last night was no different. A couple tries from the halfback, and very much, again, just in a class of his own. We know he's had an outstanding season for the Hurricanes in Super Rugby, winning Super Rugby, very much a big part going towards his fantastic performances in 2026. But once again, in that All Blacks number 9 jersey last night, he was outstanding, very much controlling the pace of the game, but just his way he just plays into those pockets. I think what we very much got to give Cam Roigard his credit for is just his ability to recognize gaps and just that mentality to just go for it. I think it's something that overall, pretty much since like an Aaron Smith left the All Blacks, we've not really seen a halfback really do. But Cam Roigard has very much made that number 9 jersey his own, and very much just showing the class he's been in this year. A really great showing for him and a great performance from him last night. Cam Roigard, my standout player. Great performance from the Counties Monaco and Hurricanes halfback. So what's next for the All Blacks? Well, they actually head to Wellington next Saturday. What will be actually an earlier kickoff of around 5:30, where they will take on Italy. Now, Italy, of course, beating Japan this morning over in Japan. And this Italy team is actually a team that should not be taken lightly. They've actually given some of the big teams in rugby a very good run for their money. And of course, as I said in my preview to the Nations Championship the other day, very much beat England in the Six Nations this year. So this Italy team at all should not be underestimated. And of course, in Wellington, Wellington. We know the All Blacks don't have the best records at the Cape Tin, but yes, very much expect changes. I think the one thing we're going to expect is changes. I think the All Blacks will look to use those players that very much didn't play last night, but also some of the newbies as well. But yes, for the All Blacks, they'll be in Wellington next Saturday for Game 2, where they will take on Italy. So that's going to be it for me. Yeah, overall, a really great game to watch. You couldn't really tell which way this game was going to go, but from an All Blacks perspective, I was actually relatively satisfied about that performance. As I said before, just so much grit and intent going forward. I think it's really great to see an All Blacks team just play with so much heart and desire going forward. But of course, for the Italy game next week, it's going to be a tough one in Wellington, and once again, very much expecting lots of changes to be made. But for me, that's going to be it, and until next time, I'll see you later.